Not many people know this, but an X-rated Mickey Mouse comic from the 70s is directly responsible for our free speech right to parody and satire. So there's a cartoonist named Dan O'Neill who throughout the 1960s had a political comic strip in the San Francisco Chronicle called Odd Bodkins that criticized everything from racism to the Vietnam War to politicians. And despite its massive popularity at the time, the San Francisco Chronicle always wanted to get rid of it because of how controversial it was and how much it angered their advertisers. He knew that if he did ever get fired or quit, he would lose ownership of Odd Bodkins, and he did not want that. So he hatched a scheme. He started adding Disney characters to his comic strip because he figured that if he ever got fired, the Chronicle would be more likely to give the rights to the book to him out of fear of getting sued by Disney. And O'Neill eventually was fired by the Chronicle, and they did eventually give the rights of Odd Bodkins to him. So his plan worked, but it also got him thinking. Why are people scared of getting sued by Disney anyway? He felt like the legal control that these massive corporations have over the way that we use and experience pop culture was just way too much, and so he hatched another plan. He got a group of artists together and they started making X-rated Disney comics with characters like Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald and Goofy doing very explicit things. And his goal was to get sued by Disney so that he could go to court and fight for people's rights to parody and satire massive characters from big corporations. You see, at the time, things like fair use and parody and satire were not actually protected by law. They were common law, which means that at some point in the past, certain judges had ruled in favor of things like fair use and parody, and so judges could look back at this legal precedent and choose to side with fair use and parody. And O'Neill felt like if he could get a big court case against Disney out on a national public stage and get enough eyeballs on it, he could push people in the direction of codifying these things into real laws. And that's exactly what happened. In 1971, Dan O'Neill and the rest of the Air Pirates were sued by Disney. And over the next several years, they went to court multiple times fighting against Disney for their right to be able to parody these characters in their comics. But the courts were not siding with the Air Pirates. The content of what they were doing in these comics was just too extreme for people. So by the time that 1978 rolled around, the court had ruled that Dan O'Neill and the rest of the Air Pirates were legally not allowed to draw Disney characters in their comics, but Dan O'Neill was not done. If anything, this was all a part of his plan. Up until this point, all of the rulings had been at the state level, and all of these court hearings were about a copyright infringement lawsuit. But he knew that if he could somehow get the case brought to a federal level and bring it into criminal court, he knew that A, at the federal level, he could make the case about free speech rather than copyright infringement, and B, if he was facing actual criminal charges and jail time, the public would quickly turn against Disney for essentially trying to put a guy in prison for drawing comics. So in 1979, he purposely violated the court ruling to stop drawing Disney characters.